Hey y'all, it's Cam again. So I'm working on something a little bit different today. I'm actually working on my 2017 Ram 2500. For any of those of you who know Dodge, Ram, know that they've had some issues with, I don't want to necessarily say slop in the steering, but it's not as tight as it probably should be. A lot of that problem comes from the steering box and from the way that it's mounted to the frame. So they make these awesome little kits. I bought one from Rough. It's a little set. It's this little kit right here. What it does is it ties into goes underneath the front sway bar mounts. It has this bushing that replaces the nut on your pitman arm, and then the bearing goes right over the top of that, and it ties your steering box into your frame rails on both sides. So I had this same kit on my 08 Ram 2500 Cummins, and it made a pretty big difference. That truck had 170 something thousand miles on it when I did that. My truck currently has about 90, I think it's around 96,000 on it now. And I wanted to put this on now. I'm going to be doing a lot of driving with my move coming up, and I wanted to help reinforce the bottom of the pitman arm now before it got too worn and it started leaking, or I needed to replace the steering box, something like that. So that's what I'm working on today. I picked up this kit. I think I got it online for like 135 bucks. They're not awful. So that's, and there's actually plenty of companies who make very similar kits. You can just browse, look. They're pretty simplistic. I'm sure if someone had the fab skills and the time, they could just make one themselves. So that's what I'm doing today. And I will be back and I will show you the finished installation. Alright, so here I am. I just got the first part of this done. I'll show you what done here. So I've dropped the sway bar. Should be two 14mm bolts on each side. Sway bar pops right off. Then what you'll do is you take your stock nut that is on the bottom of your steering box and you replace it with this nut. This has a shank on it that slides into the bearing. So now I will take the brace, mount it up here loosely, get the bearing block and all that stuff, everything mounted loosely, make sure everything's centered, and then you will tighten everything down, and I will be back and show you that process. Alright, so I got the brace mounted here. I would highly suggest, if you have a friend or someone that can give you a hand, it's probably well needed. It's not easy to hang this thing up and manipulate the sway bar so all the bolts and everything line up. And I was wrong. The original factory bolts were 15mm, not 14. So I did want to just point that out as well. So as you can see here, this nut with the shaft will actually hang out from the bottom of this bracket. And I hung these bolts from the top down. Maybe that's something habit from back when I worked aircraft, but the reason I will hang these is, let's say you have a nut that comes off. You'll still retain the bolt, and if it's only one side, at least it'll give the bearing a little bit of support in one direction or the other, versus if it was the other way around, nut backs off, you lose your bolt, the nut, washer, all of it. So that's just kind of my process, probably overthinking it a little bit, but I mean, it is what it is. And I will be back here in a little bit with the finished product. Alright, so we're all set. Bearings mounted in place, tightened down, put a little bit of grease in it, tighten down your brackets right here, and we're all set. And that's what it That's all it takes. It's probably about 30, 45 minutes tops with some pretty basic hand tools. The only other thing I want to touch on since I'm under here is there's a lot of guys who talk about the Dodge death wobble. And I'm going to do my best to explain why that occurs and how to resolve it. On the 2017s, I don't remember exactly what year they went to this style, but I know the second gens were notorious for the death wobble, even the 1500s with the solid front axle. So what they did on those trucks, they went from your pitman arm out to your steering knuckle, and then maybe about a foot or so in, they put your other link from here out to the driver's side knuckle. Well, what would happen, believe it or not, is when the truck would start bouncing, this would start flexing up and down, and it would pull on the rod from the driver's side. Thus would cause the tires to toe in, and in return would push up on this brace, making it worse. Well, then once the weight overcame that, it would push the tires back out, pushing them toe out as the both front springs compressed, and then it would come back, push up, and that's where that death wobble actually was developed from. So Dodge actually did a recall on my 2008. It had the same style steering. My 2008, they went from the pitman arm down to the brace or your other link, and that link went from spindle to spindle. So as the truck moved, you didn't have the geometry change as you did with the prior steering. Well, this is a 2017, and as you can tell, they did away with that altogether. So you have your link, which is hard to see here from your driver's side, runs all the way across to your passenger side spindle. Let's see if I can change this light here. So, and what they did is the passenger side spindle actually has two places for ball joints. Your lower one is your link to go from knuckle to knuckle, and your upper one is your drag link from your pitman arm. Then this is not your pitman arm, Jesus. So this runs all the way up here to the pitman arm, up in here. So now as the truck rides, the steering geometry doesn't change in a manner that causes the tires to toe in and toe out with weight change or with bumps on the road. You get a lot of guys who they lift the truck, which makes it worse. And then you get these guys who go out and they buy Skyjacker, double steering stabilizer setups. There's guys who run 4 steering stabilizers and stuff like that. That's a band-aid. That doesn't really take care of the actual problem. There are kits out there. I might have my terminology wrong, and if I do, I apologize. But the stock steering setup, I believe, was what they considered an inverted Y. That's the steering setup that caused the death wobble. I'm not sure what other vehicles had them. I'm sure probably some Jeeps had it. I heard Ford had some death wobble issues for a few years, but I haven't looked into what causes those. Well, there's companies who offer an updated steering setup, and I think they're calling it inverted T or T-style or something of that nature. And that eliminates that geometry change that causes the toe in and toe out issue under spring load, bumps in the road, that causes the death wobble. So I just wanted to point that out and let you guys know about that. There's a lot of guys who say, no, that's not right, that's false, etc. Your steering stabilizer's bad. which if your steering stabilizer is bad, the death wobble gets worse, but it doesn't eliminate it by any means. So if you want to eliminate the wear on the ball joints, your steering setup, your front forelink, all of that, you need to change from the inverted Y to the inverted T steering setup. This will actually eliminate the process of getting that death wobble. If you still have the death wobble after you do that, you have other components that are bad. You probably have bushings that you need to replace. Probably the centering link on the front axles, bushings are probably toast, depending how long you've driven the truck, how many miles it has on it, how old they are, stuff of that nature. So that's kind of the process that you would use to get that situation fixed. I appreciate you guys tuning in, and I will do my best to keep you guys up to date on what other information I have as it comes, and I'll keep you guys up to date on my projects. Thanks.